most people do not like talking about death.
We said, you know what, we're just gonna end this cycle of not talking about estate planning within our family.
And I knew growing up, we weren't poor, we weren't po, but money was tight.
We are the first probably financially stable people in our families.
I had my side hustle, but when I got that inheritance, you know what? I don't have to take this at corporate anymore. I have more options.
But they need that role model. They need somebody to talk to them about these issues and help them to see the importance of doing it now rather than putting it off.
Food is a universal language. When we eat together
and drink together, we learn together.
and there are few topics more important to learn
And more taboo
than money.
So join us as we travel around the country, supporting small businesses,
Enjoying delicious food
having amazing drinks, and putting money on the table.
This episode is sponsored by Trust and Will. Trust and Will is a leading provider of estate planning services for every American. Your will is something you should have direct access to and be able to update anytime. Trust and Will understands this, which is why they offer a smart and modern way to create and manage your will.
The best part is that it only takes a few minutes. Simply answer a few questions, then instantly download or ship your documents. Next, sign and notarize at your convenience. To get started protecting your family's wealth, check the video description for a link and code to save 15% on your estate plan.
Lord, we thank you for this time together, for the gift of family and friendship. We thank you for the blessings that is your word. We pray for the food that we're about to eat. We ask that you bless the hands that prepared the food. We pray, Lord, that you would help us all to share with one another and with others about the importance of normalizing conversation around money, around legacy, around estate planning. Amen. Amen.
When we first started exploring the world of personal finance, we were naive. We thought that if we understood these concepts, everyone else should too. But then we learned it's a little more complicated than that. When you don't have someone in your life you can relate to that shows you what it looks like to be financially responsible, a lot of these ideas go in one ear and out the other. So we brought together two of our favorite couples, people that we look up to talk about the importance of role modeling. So we would visit these conferences and meetings, and we'd end up hanging out with people that spoke at the conference, and we would just see a completely different side of them, right? Like, so there's who Lynnette may be on stage, but that's who she is on stage, respectfully, right? That's not who she is right now. You get a couple drinks and somebody in a meal, you meet a very different person.
Whole different conversation.
You meet your hero or your heroine after a meal, it's an entirely different person. And I just found that to be a bit more inspiring than the messages that we saw or might hear on stage or in the workshop. I believe that this is where role modeling comes into play. If you had someone that watched CNBC, let's just say as example, and that was the norm, then that will become your norm. Yes. If watching ESPN is the norm exclusively, then that will become your norm. And that was really, really important. I know you've had some positive role models in your life. I was not so fortunate, but I don't know, Cheryl, if you remember the first trip that we took after Bo was born. It was about 4 months after he was born, and we went to Dallas.
6 months.
6 months after he was born, sorry. We went to Dallas, and we went to a financial conference, and that's where you were speaking. And while you were speaking, and I think I've shared this with you before, but while you were speaking, I leaned over to Kiersten and I said, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. and I meant it. And that's what I was hinting towards to you. It was like, in that moment, I broke up with my career and my old identity. Because up until that moment, if you'd asked me what I do, I would have told you my spiel about my father working for this company, and I'm passionate about it, and I would have connected it to my ancestry as a Jamaican, and I was proud of being connected to and a part of the hospitality industry. But when I think about my community, I could not find a connection between being great at my job and helping my community. And when I saw Lynnette on stage talking about money and technology and culture, I knew that my interest wasn't just a hobby anymore, that it was much deeper than that. And because I could see someone doing it, I knew, one, I wanted to be of service. And two, I knew that making an impact was possible. And so, in part, that's why we wanted to invite you guys here.
I am such a sap. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm just like, I did not have anybody to mentor or to show me the way, and even the one or two, kind of role models that I could have connected with, it was almost the opposite. It was like it was negative.
Yeah.
And so,
if you ever hear Lynnette typing really loud, that means she's getting at somebody. Okay? And one day I just heard pop, 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 like little bullets on the keyboard. And I'm like, woo, someone's getting it.
Sometimes our role models and mentors disappoint us. Yes. And I think that speaks to how important they are. You know what I mean? Because to your point, they can make or break you in those moments.
And so I think that, if I'm honest, I think that negative experience literally sent me into overdrive. So I think it made me more of a giver to people coming behind me, just more of a mentor, more of a person who wanted to share and to impart whatever wisdom, whatever contacts, resources, help, whatever I could reasonably share, then I wanted to do so.
If you're anything like me, I think part of the reason why you go harder, not just because you're self-motivated, but I think because you realize what's at stake. And by that I mean when you realize the people that you've idolized are hurting too, that because they've had to swallow so much, that is in part why they are perpetuating these kinds of things. To your point, like this, it's very real. You know what I mean? I think that saying rings true, that hurt people. You know?
There's playbooks.
Absolutely.
There are playbooks that get passed down from generation to generation. And at some point, the playbook does not apply anymore. But folks are holding on to it. No, I must do it this way. I must do it that way. And it takes some time to unlearn these bad habits.
Change takes a long time.
Yeah.
It's complete mind shift.
It's all mental. Like, at some point, folks thought horses were better than cars, right? That's right. At some point, somebody couldn't understand why you would get in this monstrosity and go 10,000 feet in the air.
Perfectly good horse.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get there in about 3-4 weeks, right? But, but you have to teach people. And honestly, to be totally transparent, since, that's why we're here, Lynnette taught me a lot. What am I, baby boomer?
Technically.
Yeah.
That's like the most baby boomer thing ever. Yeah. What am I? Which one am I?
I understand that it's not just about getting that check for us, it's about getting that check for you. It's not only about getting the check for us, it's also about making sure that women get paid their worth. Black women get paid their worth. So it's like, okay, I've been thrust into this new role that kid from the Bronx didn't know. That I thought we just gonna accumulate lots of money, pile it up, and put it under the mattress or something. But no, there's more at stake. It's like you're pushed into a role of activism, you know, and the freedom is more important to us than anything else. Don't mess with our freedom.
I like this guy.
I like you too.
I was just going to ask about other financial role models. I wanted to hear from Jackie because you were one of my biggest financial role models. I remember exchanging emails with you in the 90s, early 2000s because you were featured on like, Oprah's like website over something about like saving 401ks or something. You were very early sharing articles about like what you were doing for your children and for your family. So I wanted to know like who were your financial role models?
I didn't have any, so I had to read and research. I remember in my early 20s, somebody approached me about selling financial products, and I didn't want to do that because I realized how much of personal finance was, but it got me curious. So I had mutual funds back in my 20s, and the plan was that I was going to invest and then retire at 45, but fooled around and fell in love and got married and had 3 kids. So I had to figure out a way to kind of make that work. But now we're on the other side of that. In April, we became empty nesters. My husband retired, but I still work because I like it. And you know, they pay me a decent amount of money to be slightly annoyed sometime. But so Kiersten, I didn't really have any. And I knew growing up, we weren't poor, we weren't po, but money was tight. And I realized at an early age that if you wanted something, just work for it. I would really cite my father, actually, and my sister Debbie. So my father, mainly because he was a shoeshine man from Harlem. His father was a shoeshine man, and his father was a shoeshine man. So 3 generations of black men who were shoeshine men. Obviously didn't have an opportunity to go to college, etc. But long story short, my dad moved from New York to Los Angeles. Family came in tow afterwards. I was raised in Southern California, and I was bused into, from our predominantly black and Latino neighborhood into very wealthy white areas. And where I was bused in Brentwood, California, Pacific Palisades, California, etc. All the white kids there were homeowners, their families were homeowners, whereas our family, we were renters. When I would see other kids, you know, they would invite me to their pool parties, meaning they had a pool, first of all, okay? And they would say, oh yeah, you know, my mom can call your mom, or my dad can call your dad, or whatever. And they would say, and they would just literally be like, oh, my dad's a doctor, you know, my mom is an engineer or a teacher or whatever. And honestly, I was ashamed. I didn't want to say, oh, my dad is a shoeshine man. And the reason my dad moved from New York to Los Angeles is that he wanted to pursue his career as an actor, which he did actually. And so I would reference that. I would say, oh, my dad is an actor. You know, he was in this commercial or he was in that. And they were like, oh, like that was like the cool thing, you know, for Southern Cal. But really, I was sort of using that as a little cover. The way he mostly earned a living was through his shoeshine stands. So most of my childhood and sort of teen years, I really didn't want to reflect or just reference that. Yeah. Later, obviously, I grew up, I became an entrepreneur myself, and I had such a great appreciation for what my father was trying to do. My dad basically wanted to be his own man, and he wanted his freedom. He wanted his independence. So I couldn't see it at the time, obviously as a child and as a teen, etc. But my dad ended up having, you know, 5 or 6 shoeshine stands throughout Southern California, and people working for him, and pretty much, yeah, you know. So
My dad was the first true entrepreneur that I knew. So he was a great role model in that respect. My sister Debbie, unfortunately, she passed away 6.5 years ago. And every time I think about her, I think about how forward focused she was and how ahead of the times on everything she was. I'll look back at old emails from years and years and years ago. She was on Twitter like 8 years before Twitter was popular. I was like,
Debbie could work a BlackBerry. She's a visionary.
She could work a BlackBerry, and she did so many things right. She had a will, mercifully. She named a guardian for her daughter. She had a minor daughter. Her daughter was 11 years old when she passed away. And she did so many things right financially to put her affairs in order. She was an entrepreneur. She was a business owner. And so so many times I'll just be thinking about her and I'll just shake my head like, just thinking about Debbie and about so many things that she did that modeled the behaviors. And at the time, I really didn't recognize. I was just so busy in my own life and working. But I really do appreciate that she actually really was a good financial role model in so many ways.
Going back to the conversation about role models, it helps to have an idea of who you may be or what you may look like or what you can look forward to. You guys are talking about, being empty nesters, man. Bo is still learning. He's 4 years old. I'm trying to figure out how to get the boy to wipe his butt. Like, I'm not even at that point yet, you know what I mean? But I can look at these guys and get a clear idea of what we may look like in a few years. And then I can look a little further beyond that and get an idea of what life can be like. I pay attention to the tiniest of details when I see things online about what you guys are doing. And it gives me that much more confidence about the trajectory that we're on, because, and what might be coming, and quite honestly, what we should stop paying attention to now and start making space for. You know what I mean? And so that's part of the reason why, to sort of round it all out, why we got all you guys together. But I wanted to ask you guys about, role modeling too. Like, I'm sure you're mindful of it, but like, how do you feel about being a financial role model to friends, family, and even like people that you have never even met before?
We knew that we wanted to share as much information as possible because we had gotten so much information, right? We didn't know that there was an entire community of people that were focused on personal finance. By the time we figured it out, we were already leaving our jobs and leaving the country.
We felt like
we were like, oh my God, we could have been amongst these people all this time. We found out, I'm seriously, just months. We attended that conference in September and we left the country in December. It was that same year. So we were like, we missed out on all these conferences.
Right.
With all these,
could have been learning much easier.
Right. So, but we did a lot of podcasts and, books. And we were like, okay, well, we want people to learn what we've learned. Right. And maybe we can communicate it and share it in a way that brings it home for others. And that's really what it boiled down to for us. So we thought, let's just put it out there and see what happens, And we don't feel that we're different, right? But people see us differently. People just started to fall off, and we were like, but wait, what happened?
So we're experiencing that.
People just started to fade, and I'm the type of person that works a lot to maintain relationships, right? Because I started out as a single mom, and I had built a large community, to support me before I got married. And then we have the support of other married couples, once we got married. But I think that people are just, their feelings are mixed, right? They're happy for us. At the same time, they are a little bit sick, is what Rob calls it. He's like, they're a little bit sick because, we're at home all day. Our kids have graduated and are gone, and we're in our 40s.
Right.
And you might have people who we have friends that are 10 years our senior because our kids are older. Yeah. And they're working, and they're going to be working for a while. And it's not because they love what they do. Right. So I think that's where it starts to get just a little uncomfortable for them. Not for us. We don't expect everybody to leave their jobs. No. And we think that if you have a job that you really like, by all means, keep it. Money. If we loved what we were doing, we would have just kept bringing in the checks. Yes. It just didn't work out that way for us.
Yeah. We think that some people think, wow, I should be way ahead of them. And what it is we, like you said, mind shift, right? We shifted our mind and we started thinking, wow, we were doing well in corporate America, right? And we could use this money and we could invest, or we could, we need to find a way. We call it the machine, right? We need to find a way to build our own machine to make our own money, right? But not everybody's doing that.
And we didn't wait till we left to share it.
Right.
Right.
We were constantly
we were telling
talking
people
about
along the way,
we're
and I don't think
this.
it made sense to anybody. And
Right.
then we left, and they were like, "Oh, they were serious about what they were saying." It looked different once we were able to leave. But I think up until that point, they just thought we were all maybe doing the same thing, because we still took vacations.
Yeah. And your machine was primarily real estate, correct?
Real estate. Well, then we always had the stock market, and we always invested in it. But our stock market was more buy and hold strategy. So we weren't using it to pull money from. We were just letting it grow. But we didn't have any problem pulling money from the real estate. And that really, helped everything to speed up.
Really speed up, yeah. But our first goal was to max out our 401ks. We were like, we could just get to the point where we're maxing them out. First, we wanted to make sure we get the match, right? Then we were saying, hey, we got to make sure as we get raises and stuff, we want to max it out. And once you can max out and put everything they let us put in there.
Because Uncle Sam was going to take anything
Right.
you didn't put in there.
And we were going up in salaries, and we were making money, and they were taking big chunks of money, right? So we were like, wow.
Especially once you get married. As a single mom, I never owed anything. Man, you come in and put those two incomes on the table, and IRS is like, ooh wee.
One of the things that I've noticed, I think it's clear that most people do not like talking about death or estate planning because of that. And maybe it's not just death, it could be, divorce or whatever it is. But estate planning as a financial topic is one of those things that I think most people feel comfortable avoiding. And one of the things that I noticed for sure is what brings it to the forefront. And rarely is it when someone we know or are close to experiences a sort of life-changing event, but it's when a celebrity or a public figure, right? That's when all of a sudden the conversation is,
do you have a will?
Comes to the forefront, right? And so I think
it's more like, I can't believe that they didn't. Chadwick didn't have it. Aretha didn't have a will.
Prince. John Singleton.
Yeah.
I was doing even more research. Bob Marley, these people, public figures, widely renowned.
And Bob Marley had cancer. He knew he was dying.
And did not have his affairs in order. And so I guess I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think about that? Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think people avoid this conversation so much?
Or are more comfortable talking about it when it's removed, when it's somebody we don't know, like we know them, intellectually, but we don't know them personally, versus our mothers, our aunts, our brothers and sisters?
Honestly, I think there are many reasons that a lot of people don't put their financial affairs in order. One is overwhelm. Like, so many people are like, look, I got problems today. I got to worry about the bills today. I have to think about my kids, my job, my career, my family obligations. And so that kind of future focus that you really do need to have in order to make sure that you would put your affairs in order right now is just lacking. And the overwhelm is a sort of a part of it, because everybody's juggling so many responsibilities. But I also think there's an element of procrastination involved, and I think that there is a lack of let's say expertise or knowledge around kind of what is required. So we've had multiple deaths in our family, unfortunately, over the last 7 years. So we've had to deal with a lot of estate issues and a lot of issues surrounding death and, family finances. And so sometimes people don't, because it seems like that's way off in the future and nothing's going to happen to me, and that kind of thing. But I do think sometimes people don't know what's kind of required to pull it all together. And they think that it's going to be overly expensive to pay a lawyer or to draft the proper documents. And they don't realize it's like, what you're eating out for, a month or two, you could cover this kind of thing.
I want to say in our family, we grew up with so little money. There was never anything left behind. It was everybody pooling money together to pay for a funeral. Yep. So there was no estate because there was nothing left. You just decided, well, is somebody going to get that furniture? Right. That was the most. There was nothing. We are the first probably financially stable people in our families. The first people who would ever actually require a will.
Well, let me challenge that notion a little bit in terms of the first people that would require a will. So sometimes I totally get that from a financial stability standpoint, that they had far fewer resources. But, the will can do a lot for you, even if you have $100 to leave behind. If you don't create a will, the state is going to decide what should be done with your stuff, your assets, and how they should be distributed. And even if you have minor children. So sometimes people who have minor children, they could be in a same-sex partnership, they could be estranged or divorced from a spouse, they might be single and not, and the other parent perhaps is not capable or not who you would want to take over as custody of the child, etc. So first there may be some issues like that involved, but then honestly, this is I think the really salient point. Put $100 between three people and watch how they argue over that $100. You might say, oh, this is grandma's plates or whatever, and it's the sentimental value stuff. So
my great aunt and great uncle, they did very well. They were the only black family in a white neighborhood. He was a fireman by day, but he had his side hustle, his stores he owned, his bars and other ventures he had on the side, okay? They were millionaires. Because he didn't have any children, my great aunt left the house to me and my mother. But also, my great aunt left a whole lot of money because her husband predeceased her, to all of her sisters, her brothers, nieces, nephews, and grands.
That's awesome.
So that gave me a head start. Remember I told you I was working in a major publisher. I had my side hustle, but when I got that inheritance, it made me feel like, you know what? I don't have to take this at corporate anymore. I have more options.
He had the FU money.
So for anyone who's watching this that is on the fence about whether they should or shouldn't, whether they have enough, whether it's worth all of the competing financial advice, because at this point, people are balancing estate planning with maxing out their 401k and opening an IRA and creating an emergency fund, a fully funded, so there's lots of milestones in the financial landscape. For anyone who's on the fence about estate planning and where it fits in their list of priorities, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I think for me, understanding that it's just not a financial legacy, to your point, that there are other things that can be left that are outlined in a will. And we are planning to update our will. We're working on that. We haven't done it yet, but we've had a will for a number of years. And so We only had 2 children. Kiersten is the youngest, and her brother. Now I have another son. Julien is my oldest, and another daughter. Portia is my youngest, and then we have 2 grandkids. So keeping a will updated with the changes that we're going through is something that we are definitely going to complete.
Yeah, for us, coming together as a blended family, having a will was critical because we both, had children from previous relationships. We knew what we wanted them to have an opportunity to start with. And even to that extent, you never know when you're going to go. So if we should depart before our parents, right? Initially we thought, well, they're gonna go before us, but you don't know, right? Since you don't know, we updated our beneficiaries to everything to even include them until their passing, right? Because we just thought we don't want them to feel like we're not thinking about them. Initially, our thought was, just, the people younger than us. But as our experience broadened and as we realized that, tomorrow's not promised, we just incorporated multiple generations until those people pass away, and then we update as needed. So if you haven't created a will, at the very least, I'd say update your beneficiaries on everything, because that can at least be a place to start. So, start with the beneficiaries if that's all you've got. At the very least, then you know where your 401k assets and life insurance and things like that are gonna go until you, lay out where the furniture is gonna be, is gonna go.
We've learned that some people leave money a little too early, right? So instead of leaving money like at 18 years old when a kid does not know anything about money, we required financial classes like the Dave Ramsey, what was it called? The financial piece. They have to finish financial piece.
Course.
Yep.
And 30 years of age for our youngest.
Yep, and at least 30 years old.
He's a little, both your kids are different.
Yeah.
You know your kids.
Yeah. So we were real specific. So Dave.
We said, you know what, we're just gonna end this cycle of not talking about estate planning within our family. We're telling our family members who are named in our wills, we're giving copies of the will to the kids and everything. We own 8 properties, and we've specifically designated, like the home that we live in right now is earmarked for Alexis. The assets are essentially gonna be split between our kids. And then obviously, like you said, there's, things that don't pass through probate, life insurance, investments, 401k assets, that kind of stuff through beneficiary designation. Sometimes people don't think that they have a big estate, but then when they start thinking like, oh, wait a minute, there's equity in this house that I own. I got life insurance, from the job. I got a 401k, so I at least got to name some beneficiaries. I got to double check my paperwork here. So at least get that conversation started. But they need that role model. They need somebody to talk to them about these issues and to kind of guide, them along the way and help them to see the importance of doing it now rather than putting it off.
Yes, I love that. And that's, again, part of the reason, that's like the perfect wrap up, because that's part of the reason why we wanted to bring all of us together, because as we were thinking about, our mission, which is to inspire better conversations about money, like there was no better way to do that than to show people what it actually looks like to do it, right? And I think this is a great example of that. And so with that, thank you. I think it's been so great, learning from you guys and getting to know your personal stories a little bit more. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for having us. Great job.
I think the bar just closed.
Did it? I'm glad I got
This
my
can't be
ticket.
right. Is it 8:30?
8:30?
That's when bars close?